combat veteran, former fire captain, strength coach, adaptive athlete, trainer, and founder of the Operation Antifragile, a nonprofit supporting veterans and first responders through strength, mobility, breathwork, and mental fortitude. Matt, if you want to come on up. After serving with three of four Marines in Iraq and Afghanistan, he later became a fire captain and developed a career in coaching. I'll let Matt, I'll turn it over to him and let him tell the rest of his story. But
sure.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. So are there people remotely? So should I kind of stay right around here so they can hear me better? Okay. So yeah, as you said, I'm a Marine Corps veteran, served with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. I fought in both Iraq and Afghanistan. I got out in 2010. After that, I did a little bit of roughnecking in the oil field, kind of trying to find my way. Eventually did some contracting with the Defense Department, and then eventually started going to school for firefighting while I was coaching CrossFit, and then got hired and started doing both essentially. In that time frame, I had a lot of stuff happen to me. You know, that was back in 2010. Now it's 2026. All kinds of different traumas, and had to navigate my way past them, both mental and physical injuries. Eventually wound up here in Orange, Texas. I was a fire captain with the department. I just quit last year to focus on this full time. Eventually I realized this is my new mission. This is what I need to focus on. I can help people better with this, and there was such a strong need for this. But yeah, this is just kind of, I just kind of took the plunge. So this is a presentation. It's also going to be a little bit educational. I'm doing a webinar soon for Wounded Warrior Project. So this kind of has some educational stuff in it as well. I'll be going over the program. Some of it I may skip through, unless y'all want me to go a little bit more in depth. I want this to kind of be interactive too. Yeah.
Like basically a little bit more that you can see online.
Like that. Trying to.
And they can't hear.
They're really interested
Okay.
online in your program.
Okay.
They want to hear it.
Is this better? Okay, I'll do my best to kind of remember that there's someone through the computer too. All right, and so as I was saying, I want this to kind of be interactive too. So if you have a question, you don't necessarily need to wait till the end. Just kind of let me know, and I'll try to get to you. Yeah. So with that, you kind of know a little bit about who I am. As y'all know, Marine Corps veteran, fought in both Iraq and Afghanistan, former firefighter as well, worked through all kinds of injuries, physical, mental. I'm technically an adaptive athlete as well with my nerve injury. I have a nerve injury from my service. It's stemmed from my neck, but my C5, C6 shut off my pec, my tricep, part of my lat. I was numb from here down. Now I'm only numb where the trigger would rest on my index finger, and I feel it as soon as I do this. So it's from being pretty much a right-handed shooter, kind of an overuse injury. It's also related to trauma. So I'll get into more of that stuff with my presentation, but I do a lot. I do breathwork stuff. I do mobility. I've been coaching since about, honestly, I like to say since the Marine Corps, because that's when I really started training my Marines and with physical fitness as well. But I started coaching CrossFit in 2012, eventually led into other aspects, strongman, Olympic weightlifting. Now my main focus is helping out tactical professionals, mainly through a lot of strongman stuff, but I do mace, kettlebell training. I do stand-up paddleboarding. I do all kinds of stuff. I just like fitness, being outside. But I'm also huge, just as it says at the end, on helping veterans and first responders heal, rebuild, and become anti-fragile. So why we exist. Sometimes when you go to get help, it makes you worse. This is a little snippet from a podcast I recently did of a little bit of my story.
You know, I was sitting there on the floor, thinking my life was over. I hid in the shower, and all that's coming out is this little drip of cold water. And I'm naked in there, just laying it, on the floor. Eventually, someone checked on me, and they're kind of shit, what's wrong with this dude, kind of thing. And one guy did it. He was like, hey man, it'll be okay. I've been there too. It was the other veterans in there. Yeah. But there was a couple good nurses, but there were some bad ones too. And One of the biggest memories I have is just, you were talking about when you were shot, thinking of your son. And that's all I was, yeah. I was sitting there on the floor, thinking my life was over. And nobody helped me, and kind of poking fun at me. Because eventually some other, probably a Vietnam vet, came and helped me up, talked to me.
So a little bit of my story. I got a lot of rabbit holes and a long story. That is from when I started firefighting in Oklahoma. After working there for about 2 years, I was wrongfully terminated. Quickly hired again by another department, but in between that time, I went to the VA for help. They did a misdiagnosis saying I was schizophrenic and bipolar, put me on a ton of psych meds. I'd never been on meds my entire life, and then all of a sudden I had a giant Ziploc bag full of medication. They sent me probably a 3-month supply of muscle relaxers, all kinds of stuff. The pills were different capsules, just very confusing too. I eventually, as I said, I got hired by another department, but I needed help. And I eventually went to the VA, checked into their psych ward for 10 days, and I was held against my will. I thought I was going on some sort of a mission. I was very out of it, for sure. But I thought I was going to get extracted at some point. And then I eventually realized, nope, it's just my PTSD. Now I realize I have a traumatic brain injury as well. But when I was in that facility, as you can kind of tell, I was treated pretty horribly. And that's what happens to some of these guys. I have friends that I've lost because they've gone to get help, and people think like this is the right steps. Go here, get help, they'll help you. And some are good. I don't want to just sit here and bash the VA. I try to not do that because some people are good in it, but it is still a very broken system. And that's why I've kind of taken things into my own hands. I was talking to my buddy the other day that sometimes I feel like Thanos with like, fine, I'll do it my own way. And that's kind of what I'm starting with this. So here's a little synopsis of our program. Essentially, we have right now, our training facility is my garage gym. I live here in Pinehurst. It's a very nice garage gym. I probably have like way more stuff than people realize. But we're working on trying to have an actual facility, one that will hopefully partner up with possibly Biomedical. I don't know if y'all are familiar with them. A good holistic health and chiropractic facility out in Sulphur. And I'm wanting to have essentially a facility for adaptive athletes and everyone where it's a one-stop shop. We're also developing a mobile retreat program where I go to the veteran. Like we have one of my buddies, Ted Hartwell. He's a Marine Corps veteran, worked for NASA, recently lost his leg in a motorcycle accident, is now an above-the-knee amputee. I've sent him some care packages to help him out with his training. Once he gets out of the hospital, he wants me to get to him and help train him. So I'm trying to also develop a program where I can go to the people that aren't as mobile or maybe they're in a rural area and don't have as much help. And then there's also just the online side of things. I do a lot of remote coaching for people. We have a remote training program that people can hop on. And it's more than strength and conditioning. This is nervous system regulation, it's breath work, it's mobility, it's peer support. If guys need to talk to a mental health professional, I have people in our network. If they have some sort of an injury where they need to talk to a physical therapist or a specialist, I have all kinds of resources, and we connect them to that. We also recently started an individual retreat program. This, I think, is really going to be our bread and butter. We had someone come in, they stayed at an Airbnb. If y'all are familiar with Cottage Cuttings, an area, beautiful area, stayed out there, trained with me, got them treatment at Biomedical, and kind of get them set up and started on a program, then follow up with them remotely. And I'll get more into that later. There's some testimonies with that. But it makes a big difference, especially that individual portion of it, because a lot of times when you go to these sort of programs, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. A lot of these guys have different traumas, and so treating it as an individual, it makes, again, a huge difference. Another huge part of our program is the care package program. So we send people essential equipment, resources. Again, it's not just gym equipment. I send a lot of guys these loadable maces. I don't know if y'all are familiar with mace training at all. I have some with me. I can bring them in here if y'all are curious and all. But it's basically something that is real easy to ship. You can take it anywhere. It works great for adaptive athletes as well. And that's part of how I recovered from my nerve injury. I know about all these different training methods because I couldn't even flex my pec. I couldn't flex my tricep. The neurosurgeons told me I wouldn't grow any muscle back. It didn't matter how many curls I did. I may not be able to get back to firefighting, but I was able to prove them wrong. I grew back 1.5 inches in about a month. And then I've come back. I competed in strongman. I took second place in a competition. Then I took first, and then I took first again. So I'm doing pretty well. Just don't ask me about my bench press. My bench press still kind of is pitiful, but still better than most. I'm trying. Anyway, so our program, again, we're designed to fill in the gap in care. A lot of times people are waiting for professional help too, and then what do you do in that time frame? That's something that happened to me more recently when I quit the fire department. I was doing all this stuff with Operation Antifragile, had a lot going on, and I was having a mental health crisis of my own. I eventually reached out to the VA, and they told me, all right, your appointment will be in 2 months. So it's like, okay, what do I do until then? And thankfully, I have tools and know what to do. So I was doing my breath work. I was talking to my peers. I was doing my workouts. But not everyone knows that stuff. I had a friend committed a death by cop. And it was actually here in Orange. It wasn't too long after I had quit the fire department. He was someone that, if anyone here familiar with Camp Hope in Houston? So I went to Camp Hope after I'd been at the VA about 10 years ago. It's a place for veterans and first responders to get help with PTSD. It's kind of changed a lot now since I first was there, but where was I going with that? Sorry, sometimes I might lose track. I went to Camp Hope with him originally, and I wish that he had known that I was here. Apparently he was living in Bridge City. I don't know all the circumstances of it, but someone sent me the story saying, man, I wish this guy knew about Operation Antifragile. And then I realized that I knew him. And so again, this is also a program I'm trying to make that's proactive to, people when they first start these jobs, whether it's military or police, fire. You need to do these things before an incident occurs. We tend to always jump in and give help after, there's a big critical incident, they need help. Why aren't we doing stuff before? Like, we know this stuff's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, especially like military going to war. We need to start giving some tools for down regulation. And also, so again, a lot of times people get out. Like, I have a good buddy, he stayed in. He's like, man, I really don't have these problems that everyone's having. And he was in the same unit as me. And I was like, it makes a big difference being in. You're still in that mindset. You still have that camaraderie. You're in that mode of like mission first still. But then you get out, you lose that camaraderie, you lose those resources, and you're just kind of lost. And then I think the mental and physical toll, that's where it all adds up. So we're trying to help with that by getting it to where, too, guys come out of the military or they're retiring from the fire service or police or whatever. Hey, do this program. It'll help you out, because a lot of guys, they transition out and they don't know what's wrong. And some of it is nervous system. And again, that's kind of the point with this slide. Some people stay silent. Some guys just feel lost. Some just need support. Some guys don't know that they're having an issue. They just don't even understand that the reason that they're not sleeping or they're drinking too much or having these relationship problems are due to trauma, whether it's physical or mental. So our intent is to find the root of their cause and not just make them resilient, but make them anti-fragile. So kind of went into that already with this. That's our mission: empowering veterans, first responders to become anti-fragile. Okay, through these resources. So with our pillars. So again, it's not just strength and conditioning. That's a huge part of it. One of the main reasons is that it's not just physical. It's improving your brain health, your cognitive function, and adaptability. It helps with neuroplasticity. Mobility, vestibular training. Got to get guys to just move better. One of the things I learned through my career in firefighting while also doing strongman was I can't be so beat up where when I get a call in the middle of the night, I can't move. And that's a lot of guys, especially as they start aging, all of a sudden it's like kind of hard to get out of bed and throw your boots on, slide down the pole, all that stuff. So I got to be mobile. And then with that, the vestibular training is a huge role. That's kind of a newer thing I've started doing, but very big on brain health, especially with recovering from traumatic brain injuries, which is now what they're really starting to discover, especially the veterans from my era with all of the IEDs and all the explosions. A lot of us are starting to have issues now because that concussion wears out the myelin sheath in the brain, and that eventually causes to where you start having a problem with making the synapses. You start losing those connections, and what seems just like maybe a focus issue, or sometimes people, they may have ADHD, or just maybe it's an anxiety thing. It's actually a brain problem. And like I discovered, I went to a brain clinic earlier this year and got some treatment, and it was life-changing. I had always had this right head tilt. Some of it was from being a right-handed shooter, and it made it to where my brain thought this was straight. And so when I was like this, everything was thrown off. I felt weird, dizzy. My right eye would stop tracking. And so when I got treatment for that, things got a lot better. And so again, a lot of stuff isn't just mental health. A lot of people will be like, oh, that guy's having a mental health problem. They also have a brain injury on top of it. So again, our pillars: strength and conditioning, mobility, vestibular training, mental fortitude, and breath work. That way we're not just working on the physical stuff, learning how to breathe right, nutrition, all this stuff. It all plays a huge role. And if you're not working this stuff, you're just doing one, eventually it's going to kind of fall and collapse. So here's kind of what we'll be going over. I know it looks like a lot. I'll try to go through it pretty quickly. Again, if y'all have questions or anything, I want it to be kind of interactive. So mental fortitude, that's the first part. Mindset is everything. And I want to talk about the difference between anti-fragility and resiliency. So if y'all are familiar with the story of Sisyphus, essentially he was cursed by Zeus to roll this boulder up a hill. Once it would get to the top of the hill, he'd have to start all over, and he'd do it again. So that's resiliency. That's getting back to where you were, and then you have a setback. Okay, get back to where you were. And that's what's happens a lot with these guys, especially at Camp Hope. I have a lot of buddies that they do better. They go out, something happens, go right back. Get better, something happens, go back. I want to stop that by making guys anti-fragile. So to where we're using controlled stressors. I use the analogy of kind of like a rock climber where they put in their safeties. And as they're going up, this way they're not falling back as far. So like 10 years ago, I had my mental health crisis. The VA put me on all those psych meds. I had to go to Camp Hope for a while, get better. Last year, I had a mental health crisis, and I bounced back very quickly because I jumped into this. I already had the tools. I didn't have to do everything else. And that's what I'm trying to get these guys to do. And then, so yeah, the story of Hydra is the anti-fragility part. If y'all aren't familiar with that, that's Hercules was fighting the Hydra. You cut off one head, two grow back. So that's the mindset I want guys to have too, where it's like, I'm not just coming back from where I started. I'm getting stronger from the stressors we're putting on them. So we start with mindset. I try to have guys start out with a morning routine. I call it the 5-5-5, essentially where you do some mindfulness, some breath work, and mobility. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes long. You can combine them. Sometimes I get it. It's the morning. It's rushed. You got to get out the door. But taking just a little bit of time to set up your mindset. I like the cup analogy where I'm like filling your cup with positive things. Okay. So this way, instead, when something bad happens, say you bump into someone and you spill your cup over and you say like, oh, excuse me, instead of watch where you're going. So you're starting out with something positive, and then this becomes a habit. And then you start moving more in the morning. That helps with the synovial fluid, helps get blood flow to the brain. There's all these little things that you're doing with this morning routine to help get you set up for success. So I love this saying too. Y'all have probably heard this, where you don't rise to the level of our goals, you fall to the level of your daily habits. Very common in the fire service and military where people say like, oh, adrenaline's going to kick in, I'll be fine. Anybody who's done those sort of jobs knows that's not the case. You fall back, and you got to make sure that you're prepared for that. So that's why, again, this isn't just about physical training, it's about mental training as well, getting these guys to be to where they're stronger in their mind as well. So again, like I was saying, too much stress, bad. This isn't just stress your system out. It's controlled, it's measured, it's manageable, being smart with it. It's setting limits and not being reckless. So breath work. Breath work is key. Many people are not breathing correctly, too. Most of the time you say, all right, everybody, you guys want to do a little practical application real quick? I'd like to see everybody just take a deep breath. Good. Now let's all try to do it at once because we're all kind of, okay. 3, 2, 1. Good. Okay, so just looking around, looked pretty good, but if y'all had noticed when I took a deep breath, I didn't have a lot of chest and shoulders rise. It's all diaphragm. And around the age of 5, people stop using their diaphragm. Kids start seeing adults, they want, there's the whole hierarchy of kids, like I'm taller than you, so I outrank you and stuff. They start doing this, and people are sucking in, so you stop using that diaphragm. And the diaphragm is a muscle. And you have all this stuff, your lungs aren't muscles, they're just basically bags of air, and your respiratory muscles are what helps that. So if you strengthen them and train them, you get not only better at your breath control, which is also connected to your nervous system, helps with your heart rate, helps with your blood pressure. But again, the mechanics are key. So I start with breath work, getting them to where they understand their breath IQ, their mechanics, because I kind of compare it where if you want to get better at your squat, but you're using horrible form, you're not going to get better. So you're doing yourself a disservice. So a lot of time, breath work is kind of a hot thing right now. But you'll see a lot of people that are just, they're still doing a lot of chest breathing. And then again, it's just doing you a disservice. If you're not breathing with the diaphragm, you're not engaging the vagus nerve. So part of our program is getting people doing proper breathing mechanics. We measure them with a Bolt test. That's essentially your CO2 tolerance. Many people don't understand that urge to breathe isn't due to a lack of oxygen. It's due to your CO2 levels rising and your body's trying to balance it out. So if you get better at that by doing just some simple training, your body gets better at distributing that oxygen. So you don't feel that need to take in the breath. Your blood pressure gets better. Just, again, lots of things get better when you start focusing on the breath. So again, here with the mechanics, and it's very important. So nasal breathing is huge. A lot of people tend to breathe through the mouth. There's times you want to breathe through the mouth. If you're doing high exertion, working out, breathe through the mouth. But if you're just in a relaxed state, it's much better to be breathing through your nose, and that's how you should be breathing. And again, we go into more of this stuff in depth. I'm going to try to get through this stuff so we have time for questions and whatnot too. So let me know if I'm going too fast or anything. So, all right. And then, this turns into, I essentially give guys, and I suggest, our program is also, while the nonprofit side is veterans and first responders, this is open to everyone. And it's part of how we get our funding, where it's anyone that wants this coaching, think of it like going to the gym, everyone helps pay for someone in need, or we can send guys care packages. So just so y'all know, this isn't just for veterans, first responders. I train on my garage gym. If y'all are interested in any training, let me know. And I also, I want to help everyone. So everyone needs this kind of help, and trauma is trauma, and there's all kinds of people dealing with traumas. So I want to make sure I mentioned that as well. But with our daily practice with the breath, essentially I try to have something in the morning for activation, pre-draining activation, or just waking up, something midday where it's either a reset or just you're focusing on a skill, and then something in the evening for winding down, because you don't want to be doing that dynamic Wim Hof style breath work when you're trying to go to bed. That's more for morning or midday. And there's certain techniques for different things, but the key thing to remember that I always like to emphasize is a 1 to 2 inhale exhale ratio when you're wanting to calm down. So if you're trying to calm down, say it's midday, that longer exhale. So inhale is sympathetic, exhale is parasympathetic. Our bodies are kind of constantly going back and forth between them. So you spend longer on that exhale, you're engaging more of the parasympathetic, more of that restore, relax. And that's part of why you just feel better when you do that. If you're frustrated and you do that sigh, we just kind of naturally do it. So yeah, practicing mindfulness before sleep, there's lots of research behind that, helping sleep quality, as well as just longer sleep time periods. All right, so again, I was kind of talking briefly about nervous system regulation and how the breath is connected to that. And a lot of people think of your nervous system as that on-off switch, sympathetic, parasympathetic. But it's really more of what I compare to as a balance board. I do a lot of balance board training, and you're really constantly shifting back and forth between the two states. It's not just one or the other, and that's why some of these guys end up getting stuck. So if you think of it like if you're on a balance board and this is sympathetic, and you're just hanging out on this side for too long, eventually all this side's going to start having problems. You're going to fall off, you're going to have some muscle imbalances. And that's essentially what happens with your nervous system. So you want to make sure you're kind of going back and forth between them, and you should be able to access both of them. But what happens in a lot of military first responder roles, traumatic brain injuries, either from like physical trauma or there's emotional trauma, that then gets them stuck, either stuck in that sympathetic fight or flight, or they're stuck in the dorsal vagal, which is that shut down freeze state, where there's the numbness, they're not having as much activation in the cranial nerves as well. That's a lot of the function of the face and why sometimes guys then lose that ability to look people in the eyes. Sometimes it's a brain issue, and it's not mental. So operator syndrome. Is anyone familiar with operator syndrome? Didn't think so. How many of y'all are familiar with PTSD though? Yeah, pretty much. So PTSD is a huge thing now. It's almost gotten so blown out of proportion where it's almost kind of losing its power to it because now. But operator syndrome is slightly different. So it's a cluster of all these different problems, the mental side of things, and also the traumatic brain injury on top of just chronic stress and the training that we're put in. So this is a photo of me when I was in Afghanistan. We had just finished Operation Cobra's Anger. It was the start of the surge in Afghan during the Obama presidency. And you can see I'm a little bit wore out looking, and that's where you can see just that kind of numb state. Sometimes people, they see that, and again, some of it is emotional. Like when I first got back from Afghanistan, it's like I wasn't smiling, just, it's part of it. But now I've also realized some of that is from brain injury stuff. When I went to the brain clinic, I always had just kind of a crooked smile, and now, what a nice smile. I know I feel silly, but I was in the mirror and I'm like, the other day, and I was like, my face looks different. And people that have known me, they're like, you look different. And it's now my eyes have changed. It's like before it would kind of start drooping, and I've had a traumatic brain injury basically since the Marine Corps. And thankfully I've just been doing like some strength work and other little things on my own, to help manage it. But now that I got to go to an actual brain clinic and see some professionals that know what to do with this stuff, it's like night and day. It's like someone flipped a switch on. But yeah, so operator syndrome, I'm trying to raise more awareness with that because that's a lot of what happens to me when I get in these states. When I stop sleeping, I go into this kind of autopilot psychosis. Like when I was in the Marines, I was a radio operator at one point for a mission, and they had a video of me. This was before we had the smartphones and good video and stuff, so I wish I still had it. But I was asleep. Me and the patrol leader were like, let's not sleep during this whole op. It was a 3-day op, and so we were trying to stay awake and be stupid. And they called in a radio report while I was sitting there sleeping, and I'd pop up and blah, 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 just say everything perfect and then go back to sleep. And so it's like, and my wife knows I'll sometimes do this stuff on autopilot. It's like I'm sleepwalking, but people have no idea. It'll be very professional. Well, sometimes it's professional. Sometimes I'm just bonky. But so yeah, I was talking about emotional, mental. Is anyone familiar with this book, The Body Keeps the Score? No? Very good book. Highly recommend it. I am essentially a walking example of it because my nerve injury, it's also tied into my mental health and other just traumas that I have. When I think about things, I'll get these shocks of nerve pain. When I hear, that's towards the end of the fire service, there goes one of the engines, lights, sirens, tones would go off, I'd get shocks of nerve pain. When I was in my extremely stressed state and I hadn't been sleeping, sounds would make my trigger finger twitch. And so I'm just kind of that weird wired, I've been doing this stuff for a long time and it's hard to get it out of the body. And it manifested essentially as a nerve injury. Some of it's also from having jobs where I had a helmet all the time, blown up, all this stuff. But yeah, you can see how, And it's weird. I can't really explain it, but just when I think about certain things, I'll have these pains. And I'm not alone. A lot of autoimmune disorders are due to trauma. That is part of what they're discovering. So it's very important to get to the root cause of your traumas and deal with them. So I love this analogy. Trauma and stress is kind of like a file that you put in the cabinet. Our brains and bodies are like these little file cabinets. So if you never go through and sort that trauma or deal with your injuries, guess what happens? They eventually explode, go all over the place. So this whole program, I'm hoping to essentially create more space in the drawer, and then also get it to where you're going through and organizing this stuff. And that way, before some big incident happens, because a lot of these guys, especially in the first responder world, they think they got to have some huge critical incident, and now they're allowed to have like PTSD or operator syndrome stuff, and it's just not how it works. It's a lot of chronic stuff that accumulates over time, and you're in that stress state over and over. Then you have some little critical incident, and that's just kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, essentially. So again, here's just like a nice little imaging of that. So we focus on the cognitive, behavioral, and emotional parts of the brain, try to get a lockdown on stress, get it nice and organized. And that's what I'm trying to do with this program. So again, we don't heal by avoiding the stress. You learn, or you heal by learning how to recover from it. Strength. So I love talking about this. Does anyone have any questions up to now? Doing good time-wise? Try to speed it up.
Only got about 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, here, then let me fly through this then, because I want to have time for questions. Okay. Because yeah, there's a lot. So yeah, this is like kind of set up for a webinar. So let me go through this fast then. So we do strength, again, way more than just lifting. This is for brain health, but it's got to be right. So we set people up, we meet them where they are with the right intensity.
Hey, you can go over. You just may have a couple of people leave.
Okay, well that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. All right. So again, essentially, so strength. A lot of people think of it as physical, but it's brain, it's nervous system. Strength is nothing more than a signal from the brain to the neuromuscular junction, telling your muscles to fire with synergy and power. That's why if y'all are familiar with like Olympic weightlifting, or like I'm a lightweight strongman, so I'm a small strongman guy, but I can lift heavy weights, but I'm not one of these huge guys. That's because I know how to train right and train for power, and you have again, it's all about that signaling. And I talk about, I compare it to like a Wi-Fi signal. So the more you train, the better that signal gets. And when you first start, you only have like 1 bar, but if you train properly and work on those signals, then you get it to where it's 5 bars. Again, so rep range, load determines a lot of this stuff. You have different muscle fibers. I won't go into all of that stuff, but that's kind of, so here's where you can kind of see. So that's that myofibrillar hypertrophy. So that's like that real dense, a sprinter. They got that kind of like thicker, smaller muscle. And then there's the sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. That's like for building like mass. That's like bodybuilders and stuff. So it's larger, takes up more space, not as powerful. Strength is huge after trauma, not only just for confidence, physical ability, but again, it's one of the best things for producing BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's like fertilizer for the brain. So this is healing the brain, healing the body. That's why it's so important to get these guys moving again, and also just building confidence. Because a lot of these guys too, when they try to go back to doing what they used to do and they can't, and then think of like how that makes them feel. It's like, man, I used to be able to do all this stuff and now I can, and they don't. I had a buddy, same nerve injury as me. And he called me up just like, man, I can't use my arm. I don't know what's happening. He was a football coach. That can just ruin your mental health as well. So teaching him and gotten him better. I sent him some stuff. So again, it's meeting guys where they are, giving them the right program with what they need. So key principle, find what works for you and execute consistently. Consistency is key. Conditioning, I won't go too much into this, but it's important to train the different gears. Okay, think of that like a system, and it's not just running. People make the mistake of conditioning. Okay, I'm just going to run, and then I'm going to run more and more and more, and it's like you're just like beating yourself down. I use like a car analogy, so you need to train those different gears. It's just like if you never put your car in 5th gear, and then like 10 years down the road, you go to do it, I don't know, it probably have some problems, may have some trouble shifting. So it's very much a thing of if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's important to train both. This helps with the mental side of things. Some people have strong legs, some people have strong lungs. I use an O2 trainer. I do respiratory training. That's something I can go into a lot more of if y'all are curious, but again, trying to kind of go a little bit faster. So again, so all this stuff, if your heart rate increases, your breath, your respiratory rate increases, decision-making skills and cognitive function go down. So that's why some guys, they get on these calls. If they're a firefighter, they're, oh, what's happening? And they can't think. And then they're just like, man, I don't know what happened. And it's, well, you were out of breath, you weren't getting blood flow to the brain, and that's part of it. So if you train this stuff, you'll perform much better mentally and physically. Again, it's best to keep this stuff separate, strength and conditioning, but if you can't, combine them. Consistency beats perfection. Mobility, movement over maxes, very important. Why do we lift weights? It's to challenge posture and position, not change it. So it's very important to move properly right, have that proximal stability before distal mobility. And again, it's just critical. We want to get guys out of pain. Like I was talking about when I was a firefighter, and at first I was getting bigger and strongman, and I'd get out and just like, God, it hurts to move. I didn't like that. Nobody likes to be in pain. So that's a huge part of our training program as well. And we use a joint by joint approach. I don't know if y'all are familiar with this, but if you notice, if you go joint by joint, one is for mobility, one is for stability. And if one of these isn't functioning very well, so like ankles, that's an easy one for me to go to because a lot, especially military guys, people in boots, shoes, when those are immobile, you get knee problems. And then you get hip problems. It just kind of goes up the line. And that's why I'm huge. I'm barefoot usually almost like all the time. Didn't used to be. I've had all kinds of Achilles tendon problems. I've recovered from that stuff and got my feet stronger. I actually used to wear like a size like 9, 9.5. Now I wear a size 11, 11.5. Because I broke my heels when I was a kid. My arches were all messed up, and now I strengthened them, and they've kind of flattened out. So I do 5-minute mobility flows in the morning. Try to get to where it's a full body thing. And again, it's also getting good blood flow to the brain, helping with joint lubrication, all kinds of stuff. Let's see. So that's, if we're doing longer, I'd have y'all do a little mobility flow with me. I have videos on my YouTube channel. I'm trying to get it a little bit more organized, but I do like this coffee mobility thing. I get on like my balance board and I drink my coffee and I do my balance board. I also do mobility drills because I try to get people to where, like, even if you're having your morning coffee, you can still, get your leg back here, drop down, do some trunk rotation, do just a little bit of stuff, and you'll all of a sudden start feeling better. All of a sudden that back pain goes away. All of a sudden you get up and you're like, I don't hurt anymore. So that's a big part of it. All right, so yeah, the balance and vestibular training, again, the chronic blast exposure is a huge part of it, and you lose those systems. And when you don't train them, a lot of people, one of my favorite clients I have right now, Patrick, he's one of the owners of Cottage Cuttings. Got him on the balance board. He's always kind of promoting my stuff. I don't know if y'all have ever seen him. I got him doing a 180 on a balance board now, and he's 62. And when he first started with me, it was very shaky, not sure, but I love watching people's progress with it. And it doesn't take too long, but it's one of those skills that you do, if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's fall prevention. It's more than just, for surfers, skateboarders. I tell people, like athletes, like I do strongman, and when I'm lifting like a 300-pound stone, I have to get onto my toes to get it over the bar, and that takes balance. And now they're saying, maybe y'all have heard about grip strength, and longevity and brain health. Same thing with foot health. So make sure doing stuff to strengthen the feet. And then again, the imaging for guys. A lot of times they're told your brains are fine, but they're not. They aren't doing the proper scans. So let me see. Let me get through here. So again, treating the brain helps with the mind as well. I help guys, I get them set up on an anti-fragile routine. This is essentially our training system. Trying to get the guys set up again where they're not again, like we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. So we need to have that good foundation for them. I don't know if you want me to go into, I got like quite a few testimonies. I'd rather kind of open it up for questions or anything y'all have.
How do we find you? You're open to the public. How do I find you?
OperationAntifragile.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I've had some problems with our website, guys, getting the website updated. Got a new guy going now, but it's a good website. But yeah, find me there. I got cards. Yeah.
Cool. And so a lot of your, since it's at your home, is it mostly like you set up appointments with?
Yes. So you can book through my Calendly. I have it where, and it depends. I can do like small group stuff. But yeah, it's pretty much book with me. It's an individual session. Yeah.
You said you do remote as well?
Yeah, so I do remote coaching. So we also have a program through the app Train Heroic that people can get on. This is also open to everyone, where it essentially follows my training. So it's like a team program, but then I can also give people like their own custom program, whether it's on a spreadsheet, or I can also give them stuff on the app, and it has like video demos. So yes, I do either like in person, or I can, say you're someone in the area and you're like, hey, I got like some kettlebells, a jump rope, some resistance bands. I can set you up with a program like for a month and give you a little template, go back with you back and forth. And yeah, so I also do remote coaching like that as well.
Do you have any other questions? There is a stack of cards up here, so if you want to stay in contact with him, I'm sure you can pick one of those up at the end of the meeting.
I did want. Can I mention
Sure.
one thing? So I'm sorry it took so long, but I did really want to mention at least one of these testimonies. So this was a firefighter. He responded to the Kerrville floods. This was after he hit me up. Did some training with him, got him on our program, and I've gotten many more messages like this where he says like this is life-saving. So I just want y'all to know, like, I am very passionate about this. I am someone with integrity too. I've been through this stuff myself. I've been abandoned before, and I never want that to be this program. And it's starting to grow. Again, like we're trying to get a facility going, and there's a lot of moving parts going on. We have a board and volunteer meeting coming up next week. So I'm very honored and appreciative to come talk to y'all. I know there's a lot of great people and connections with Rotary. And I love the community in Orange. As a firefighter here for a long time, I miss getting to serve the people, but that's why I get to do it in a different way through this. Yeah.
Thank you. Matt, I'll mention one of our programs is we place books in the